Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. Okay, yeah, all right, got it all correct. And, time for another show. There's nothing you can do to stop it, no matter how hard you try. Everything seems to be on the up and up, though, so no major technical issues standing in the way. A little bit of a late start in getting the pre-roll of the show going today. But should be A-okay if we can just figure out what's in the news. And there's so much. It's not hearing day yet. That doesn't come until Thursday. But everybody's now on the edge of their seat anticipating this, waiting for it. The primetime hearing coming on Thursday. The word is out that the TV networks will, in fact, carry, I don't know whether all of it, but at least the bulk of the Thursday hearing. Lots more rumors about further hearings and stretching this out even further, an entire new series of hearings perhaps after this. Lots of indications Greg will share with us tomorrow that the polling says that minds are being changed. Not all of them, and it's not erasing MAGA from the face of the earth, and that was never really in the offing anyway. But at the margins, where these races are won and these questions are settled, there's change, and so that's good news. It's always good news to move the swing voters over. It's amazing that there are ever people that would consider themselves, a toss-up voter between the person who is having their criminal history and treasonous history laid out in front of everybody in national hearings and anybody else, but some people are slow to come around to the reality of these things. All right, let's see what's happening this morning besides my having a strange side conversation about the fact that the January 6th insurrectionists, had they reached the floor of the House during the joint session with an element of surprise somehow, or they managed to catch everybody still frozen in place on the House floor, had they been able to capture those electoral college votes and the certificates of ascertainment that went along with it, couldn't they have interrupted, or at least, couldn't they have prevented, if not just delayed, the actual transfer of power from Donald Trump as the prior president to Joe Biden as the new president? And the answer is, well, yes and no. But you know how that's the answer to everything on this program. But I just watching somebody say, and it's probably true. Well, let's see. Let's just grab the conversation. It's still bouncing around in my mentions at the moment. Whose thread? This was not the focus of the thread. It was just one of many entries in this person's lengthy thread theorizing about what it is that was going on, in their view, on January 6th. And this part of the theory, then this doesn't negate the theory either. But as it happens, who are we talking about? Someone who tweets under the name of Strictly Christo. Where that comes from, I couldn't tell you, but it doesn't matter. At the moment, a prominent personage with a large following, I guess, on Twitter, but laying out this theory of what was going on January 6th, this part of it being, borrowing a quote from, is it Jonathan Karl, I think, speaking in this piece, saying, "I believe those rioters were keenly focused. This wasn't a protest. It wasn't, this was," I don't know what the "it wasn't" was supposed to be, but they break off and say what it was, which was an effort to stop the transition of power. This is, again, a quote from, I think, Jonathan Karl. I believe they were searching for those ballots with the intent of destroying them. And I guess the article from which this quote comes is attached to this. Like I said, this isn't the main focus of the thread, but I just want to remind everybody, because it's cool that we talk about this from time to time, and the listeners to this show know right off the bat, at this point, I think, all right, well, that's certainly, that's as likely to be true as anything else. that the people who were storming the Capitol probably thought, yes, we can stop the transfer of power by grabbing the Electoral College ballots and getting rid of them, burning them, destroying them, kidnapping them, whatever it is, because they don't listen to the program. And they should have stopped on January 5th and listened to the program and asked me this question, and we could have told them, well, you would likely cause some disruption and delay, but maybe not even that much, because everybody knows, not everybody knows, but it's there, it's written down, you can go and look, that each state prepares 6 copies of those ballots, of those Electoral College votes and the accompanying certificates of ascertainment, and that they are stored in various locations around the country. Some are collected, all the states in one place. They're, of course, mailed to the President of the Senate, that, of course, being the Vice President of the United States. I don't know who actually handles the mail, but those, I assume, are the copies that in the first instance they would use on January 6th to total up the votes. But there's another full set of the copies at the archives as well. And as I recall, I think there are multiple sets sent to the archives, multiple sets sent to the President of the Senate, and then, of course, one that comes to rest with the federal district judge, most senior federal district judge presiding in the district in which each state's electoral college members meet and sit. So in 50 different state capitals around the country, there's more copies of this thing. So, yeah, it's a pretty good redundancy system that they've built into things. And it's pretty unlikely that they would have been able to destroy all evidence of what the actual outcome of the Electoral College is, because also we all saw it on the TV news. And, of course, in many cases there are videotaped records of the votes being cast as well, which also would help. In the case of an extreme emergency, it would be pretty difficult to erase all evidence of the actual Electoral College votes and replace them with fake ballots. But that does not, by any means mean, I guess, that the rioters and insurrectionists and traitors on Capitol Hill on January 6th that year were aware of this or aware of anything in particular. Of course, it also doesn't mean that they actually had this plan in mind either. It's just speculative. Anyway, nothing wrong with the rest of the thread as far as I can tell. I haven't read all the way through it, but just that one thing. I just want to remind everybody that it was fun. We read the Electoral Count Act at one point, and we came to realize that it would be much more difficult to pull that off than a bunch of idiots thought it might be, if that's what they were after. All right. Oh, here's news rolling in. We have to have some UK news, and it turns out they did, in fact, break their high temperature records. I don't know whether it's for all of Britain or did it happen in London, but 104.4 degrees Fahrenheit measured somewhere in the UK, according to this tweet and a report from The Hill. The Hill has no particular interest in how hot it is in the UK. They just love to be news aggregators and get in my timeline and be mentioned. They should pay for this privilege, but I'm willing to do it for free for some reason. All right, so where were we here? Yeah, they of course measure their temperature in Celsius. It was 40.2 degrees Celsius, 104.4 degrees Fahrenheit at Heathrow Airport. There's the answer. If you were looking for that previously, the highest temperature ever recorded in Britain was 38.7 degrees Celsius, or 101.7 degrees Fahrenheit, a record set in 2019. Yeah, so, things are getting hotter over there. So, okay, and they really kind of smashed that record. 38.7 degrees, smashed now 40.2 degrees. The first 40 plus degrees Celsius temperature measured anywhere in the UK, and they've been measuring temperatures for a long time there in the UK. It's an old country. All right, well, anyway. As I drink some 104.4 degree Fahrenheit tea, which is not that hot for tea. But anyway, just wanted to get that bit on the record. It's very hot there. And oddly, there are some people reveling in the high temperatures And as we said, there was something going on there that people were objecting to. The newspapers and news sources there in the UK pretending it was like, well, it's just a beautiful beach day, which I guess it could be for somebody. And down at the beach, it's probably a little cooler. That there's always the ocean breezes, and then there's always the water, although the water is probably... I wonder what the water temperature is. They're not used to that. Anyway, not the top issue of the day. Not even really the top UK issue of the day. But Greg's not here to go over what's going on in the leadership races there. And we'll save that item for him for later and see if there's more news. I think the guy with the weirdest name and who Brett Stevens was excited about, and so therefore you would not be excited about, was eliminated in the leadership race. It was all I remember is that his last name sounded like Toucan Hat, but it's not. It's Tugan Hat or something like that with a G, but Toucan Hat is funnier. So way to go, Tory voters! Follow your nose. It always knows not to elect a guy with a name like Toucan Hat or Tom Toucan Hat. It was an alliterative name, so that's funny too. I love making fun of those politicians. All right, let's see. Other things in the news. Let me run over to Pocket and pull up what we've got. First of all, I guess the last in time entered in Pocket is the news or the write-up from Politico about what to expect for the hearings coming up. So that's always important. Sprint through the finish is the title of this piece. Why the January 6th committee isn't nearly done. Subheader reads, it once envisioned a wrap-up before the leaves turned this fall. Very romantic sounding, really, but not to be. But as new evidence pours in, investigators see the real deadline as January 3rd, 2023. That, of course, would be the day that the new Congress is sworn in, no matter who is in the majority. Of course, that would, regardless of the outcome of the election, terminate the current charter for the January 6th committee. I believe that's true. And they would have to reorganize and recharter the committee if Democrats were to hold on to a majority, and they might very well do that. I don't know. But I guess they're aiming to wrap things up in the time that they're sure of. Of course, if Republicans were to take the majority, they would almost certainly... they wouldn't have to dissolve the committee, but they wouldn't reconstitute it. And in fact, they're threatening to constitute a new committee that would investigate the January 6th committee because of how unfair it is to Republicans or something like that. They have a whole theory on this. So, I guess that would be something if they really... It would be interesting if they really felt the need to hold hearings right up through or do work right up through January 3rd, 2023. And there's plenty of reason for it. They could certainly, there's enough work to be done that they could do that. That would demonstrate a certain urgency and commitment to the cause, I think. I don't know if it would be all that clear to everyone. Anyway, Kyle Cheney and Nicholas Wu writing this piece for Politico. The January 6th Select Committee once envisioned a single month packed with hearings. Then a fire hose of evidence came its way, and now its members have no interest in shutting or even slowing the spigot. Well, all right. As its summer hearings show some signs of chipping at Donald Trump's electoral appeal, select panel members, or that is to say, members of the select panel, as opposed to, they might mean here that only certain of them panel members, select ones, that is, describe Thursday's hearing as only the last in a series. That's good news, because there's a lot of people pointing out, there's more of this story to tell, for sure. Committee members, aides, and allies are emboldened by the public reaction to the information they're unearthing about the former president's actions and say their full sprint will continue even past November. So that's pretty good commitment right there, too. There is a lot of information still to be developed, still to be shared with some dot connecting exercises with the public. I know, let's see, last night I picked up an email. Let me see if I can open it up here. Our frequent correspondent, Roger Hake, who just happened to write about that subject briefly last night, and although I have no explicit permission to share the email, I can share the spirit of it with you because it's a good observation. Just generally that he recalled our discussion of the fact that the committee had divided its work up into various teams, some of them, well, all of them color-coded, and some of the colors making particular sense, green being follow the money, etc. I don't remember what the rest of them were, but there was a team blue that was supposedly looking into the response of law enforcement and the Secret Service and the Pentagon and National Guard, etc. And Roger pointing out that so far there really hasn't been much in the way of lengthy discussion of what they've uncovered, and, wondering whether that would be part of Thursday's presentation or whether that's still to come in a second series. Maybe that's part of the necessity for a second series. It's a good point, reminding us, to follow up on that story about how they divided up the work. And there's news elsewhere, by the way, that the committee is in contact with the still unnamed actual driver of the SUV limo that Trump was in on January 6th after his speech on the ellipse. And I think we can say it's been pretty fully established that he argued that he ought to have been taken to the Capitol immediately following the speech on the ellipse. Secret Service rejected that idea and took him back to the White House. And I guess still in question is the exact nature of Trump's response. Certainly verbally, everyone pretty much agrees that that he made demands, let's say, of the Secret Service detail. Where Republicans still insist on disputing things is over whether there was any physical confrontation. So it might be of some interest to talk to the driver, I guess, to see whether he agrees that there was any physical confrontation. I don't think they actually need the driver to corroborate the story of the demand to go, but they also don't really need him to corroborate any claims about a physical altercation, because it really is inapposite to the whole thing. But I guess if they were to testify that that did happen, that would be interesting and surprising for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the amount of energy that Republicans spent denying that it was true. So, all right. Well, let's continue with the Politico article after this brief message from my cup of tea. I know that's disruptive, but the benefits of a warm cup of tea when you're talking for 2 hours, I think, go without saying. Not that, well, no, they don't, because I keep saying them. So, they would under normal circumstances, but you're listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show, and I can't help it. All right, where were we here? Yes, right. The only hard deadline, the committee members say, is, of course, January 3rd, 2023, when I wouldn't have put it this way, but when Republicans likely take over the House. I don't know how likely that is anymore. It's getting less likely. That's true. And it would have been fair to say that the deadline is January 3rd, 2023, when the new Congress is sworn in. And I believe, I'm not 100% certain now that I think about it, but we could certainly look at their governing documents. But I think that perhaps the Select Committee is chartered basically through the end of this Congress, whatever number we're in here. What are we in, like 117th now? Easily extended, certainly, if Democrats do remain in the majority. But okay, I mean, it's a good place to lay the deadline right now. Thursday's hearing will focus on Trump's hours of inaction at January 6th, 2021, while a mob ransacked the Capitol and supporters, aides, and family members begged him to speak out. I suppose that's possible to expand the scope of that without changing the focus, without changing the theme, to say, okay, well, we're focusing on the fact that he's sitting there doing nothing, but we're interested in it because what he should have been doing would have been talking to law enforcement and the Pentagon about a response, and he didn't, and maybe they could work it in that way. Or again, maybe Team Blue feels shortchanged at this point, and that's part of the reason they're talking about a second set of hearings. We haven't had a chance. We've jumped out of the way for spur-of-the-moment revelations about other aspects of Trump's criminal activity that day, but we still want our chance to be in the spotlight. But anyway, where were we? Beyond that, the committee is pursuing multiple new avenues of inquiry created by its investigation of Trump's scheme to seize a second term he didn't win, from questions about the Secret Service's internal communications, as well as leads provided by high-level witnesses from his White House. And that may also be a part of the delay in hearing from Team Blue. The story that's developed over the last couple of days that the Secret Service, having been asked to produce its text message records for January 5th and 6th, 2021, declining to do so, saying that for some strange reason they decided after the request was made to do routine maintenance on their communications devices and erase, I guess, all of their messages, or a whole lot of them that they're after anyway. That opens up a whole new can of worms. It's been amazing to see kind of the flurry of people coming forward, said Representative Adam Kinzinger, one of the panel's 2 Republican members. So it's not the time to wind it down. I guess another problem with, or another reason why the January 3rd, 2023 deadline matters, even if Democrats maintain the majority in the House and reconstitute the committee to continue its work, Adam Kinzinger will no longer be a member of Congress at that point. I don't know whether, nobody knows whether Mary, well, why not Mary Cheney? Why don't we have Mary Cheney be there instead of Liz Cheney? That would be a big help, I think. But, I don't remember what the status of her situation is, but I think she's still embroiled in a primary race there, and she could, of course, still stand for election as an independent if she were willing to fight on. I don't know what's her thinking on that front, but Kinzinger seems to have made the decision to retire, and he'll be gone, and it'll be awfully difficult to get another Republican to agree to serve. So it really might be just the end of the committee as currently constituted. If no Republicans were willing to serve whatsoever, it might be that they continue their work, but they would probably be a little less enthusiastic about it than they are when they're able to point to Republican participation. The new open-ended timeline, it's not open-ended, they said very clearly that there was an end date, is a marked shift in the, or marked, as they like to say sometimes, shift in the public posture of a committee that once eyed a conclusion as early as springtime, then looked to a September wrap-up. A confluence of forces led by a series of recent breakthroughs has led to its new posture. A major reason to continue for many select panel members is the public discussion they've driven about what they see as an ongoing threat to democracy posed by Trump and his allies. That seems like a good reason to keep going, don't you think? With every new hearing, particularly as White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson described an enraged Trump directing armed supporters to the Capitol and trying to join them there, the panel seems to get further under the skin of the former president as he contemplates a third bid for the White House. Each hearing has offered new insights about the Trump-driven push to unravel his loss based on false fraud claims, and as a result has motivated new witnesses to come forward. Aides and members say Thursday's hearing, we'll add that, featuring witnesses including former Trump White House press aide Sarah Matthews and former Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger, I guess that everybody has to have Matthew in their name somewhere, will be no different. We're going to sprint through the finish, select panel member Representative Pete Aguilar of California said in a brief interview. The peak investigative time was probably February, March, or April, he said. It's fewer interviews right now, but I don't think that means we're letting up. We're doing some re-interviews of folks, but it's important. The panel has spent recent weeks highlighting several facets of Trump's election subversion effort, his bid to deploy the Justice Department to help sow doubts about the election, his pressure on state legislatures to defy the will of the voters by appointing alternate electors, his push for then Vice President Mike Pence to single-handedly reverse the outcome, and the way his rhetoric activated domestic extremists and conspiracy theorists to march on the Capitol. As Aguilar observed, the rhythm of witness interviews has remained steady, far from an indication of a wind down. Former Overstock.com CEO, that guy again, Patrick Byrne, participated in a lengthy interview on Friday to discuss his participation in a December 18th, 2020 Oval Office meeting in which Trump and outside advisors discussed the prospect of martial law and seizing voting machines, and I guess selling them on Overstock.com. There's really just no reason in the world why that would have ever happened. But anyway, Steve Bannon, the erstwhile Trump ally, is that a good word for him? I don't know. Whose criminal trial for defying a select committee subpoena began yesterday, with jury selection, has also indicated in recent days that he would cooperate with the select committee. I don't really believe that's true, but after months of defiance. But Bannon hasn't made good on that yet, and the panel has indicated that it wants to receive subpoenaed documents from him before agreeing to a belated deposition. Several critical January 6th related lawsuits are also still underway, with key inflection points arriving next month. Those include the select panel's separate fights to secure documents and testimony from former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and the Republican National Committee. The committee is also pursuing leads revealed by Hutchinson, who testified last month that Trump was aware of armed elements in the crowd that he directed to march to the Capitol, and he sought to join them there before staff and Secret Service stopped him. Okay, let's see. Ooh, almost time for our music. Bam. There it is. Okay, two Secret Service officials whom Hutchinson referenced, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, who never should have been in that job, Tony Ornato, and Robert Engel, the head of Trump's security detail, have indicated they may return to the committee to respond to some of Hutchinson's testimony under oath, despite interest among Trump allies in an attempt by either man to discredit Hutchinson's version of events. Neither have appeared yet. Here's a little bit more. We might as well conclude this article after a 2-minute tea break. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Good point here. I'm picking up from the Twitter machines, a good piece of pushback on the duplicate sets of electoral college certificates and the certificates of ascertainment. Republic_kept chiming in on that score. Where I had just said, okay, just a reminder that while this theory is likely true and they probably did want to destroy those certificates, it's just one of 6 duplicate sets that are out there. But an excellent point made. If they had, in fact, captured those boxes and, burned them, as I think the theory was that they were going to do it, I don't know what they had planned, and it doesn't really matter. I suppose if they had decided to dip them in, in tar and fling them into the Potomac, whatever the treatment might have been. If they had gotten a hold of those boxes and posted video of them destroying them, then surely, MAGA America would never accept the results of the quote-unquote backup boxes. I mean, we might as well. That's how they would refer to them, of course. The denial would be cranked up to 11, and that's probably true. That's, all the parts of this thing are true, too. I can't imagine that if they had captured the ballots in those special, lovely antique wooden boxes and then destroyed them on camera, they almost certainly would have claimed, I doubt they would have acknowledged that those are backups that exist elsewhere. They would have just said, you all saw us destroy the thing. This is something, of course, they forged them and these are fake. And they absolutely would have said that. There are absolutely people who would have bought into that. It would have taken the news media, 2 days to figure out that there really were backups and that those were legit. I mean, in the real world, they would have worked just fine, and the courts would say, no, I'm sorry. The fact that you destroyed one set of them really it just says nothing. I mean, it's the reason for keeping 6 copies. So, I mean, this is easily contemplated. But yeah, absolutely, the conspiracy theorists would have insisted that it was some kind of a scam, even though, I mean, again, on the side of the so-called scam was widespread news reports that Joe Biden had won the election, and the reason was that he had won the electoral votes in enough states to win that election. So they would have been going more crazy, certainly, but at that point, if the coup is put down, and I guess if they get to the point where they capture the ballots and they burn them, and I don't know whether if they also injure or kill members of Congress or government officials along the way, I don't know whether that's necessary. But I think that extra step of capturing the things and destroying the actual electoral votes probably begins to turn some more sentiment against them. They probably peaked in terms of their effectiveness, even with the conspiracy-minded among the MAGA crowds, with what they did, given that they didn't capture any members of Congress and harm them. They didn't capture any singular, particular piece of the puzzle that would cause people to say that some sacred line had been crossed. Yes, they did smear feces in the Capitol. They smashed windows, etc. People died, but there was nothing in the way of direct, mob action that snatched an enemy of the people, as the mob defined it, and tore them to pieces or hanged them or anything like that. And this might have put them over the top. I say they peaked. They may have done the most damage they could do before the net effect of doing more damage begins to be net negative, even with the MAGA crowds. So I don't know, but it's a good point, and it's worth thinking about, and you should never cut off discussion of just how crazy Republicans can actually get over anything. All right, so let me copy that link and have it around so I can share it with you for the roundup. I think it was a good point, so thanks very much for chiming in. Mark it, put it away in pocket, and get back to the end of this Politico piece. Where did we leave off with this? Yes, right. The third. We had just said that the two Secret Service, the named Secret Service connected folks, Tony Ornato and Robert Engel, have been making noises about wanting to testify under oath to the committee, but they haven't appeared yet. A third official, the as yet unidentified driver of Trump's SUV on January 6th, is also engaging with the committee about testimony. Last week, the panel subpoenaed the Secret Service through its outgoing director, James Murray, for internal reports, outgoing, internal, that's fun, related to January 6th, as well as reams of text messages sent by agents that day. The agency has said many of those messages were erased. Whoops. Wait, we probably have a sad trombone standing around for that one. Got to get a better recording of that. It doesn't have that real sting in the middle, but not a top priority. Anyway, the agency has said many of those messages were sadly erased as part of a staff-wide phone upgrade that commenced last year. Some may come into the Select Committee's possession this week. A lot of people pointing out the Secret Service actually maintains a special laboratory for recovering such messages when they want to prosecute people. But I don't know, they seem to be slow on the uptake with these phones. The Select Committee is also still weighing how hard to fight for the testimony of Ginny Thomas, the longtime conservative activist and wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. She had become part of the select panel's investigation after revelations she had texted Meadows, then White House Chief of Staff, and others about contesting Trump's loss. Ginny Thomas had also invited John Eastman, the architect or an architect of Trump's post-election legal efforts, to speak to a conservative group known as the Frontliners about election litigation. Her attorney pushed back on the panel's request for a voluntary interview last month. Another significant indicator that the committee is unlikely to wrap up imminently, its staff has mostly stayed intact. Typically, when congressional inquiries reach their quotas, the top investigators depart. I'm debating in my mind whether I like the use of quotas on that one. Anyway, so far the January 6th panel's main teams remain fully staffed. Even Team Blue, I guess, Roger. But with the only notable exits coming from former Representative Denver Riggleman and senior investigative counsel John Wood, who left to run for Senate as an independent in Missouri. Despite the newly open-ended timeline, the committee is still likely to produce a comprehensive report this fall. Its chair, Benny Thompson, has emphasized that the panel intends to spend much of the August lull compiling and distilling its 1,000 witness interviews and tens of thousands of documents into a cogent narrative, which they've done a pretty good job with on TV so far. But in recent days, Thompson also floated the prospect of issuing an addendum to the report based on any findings the select panel makes later in the year. I would say we would be open for any information until we more or less finish, Thompson told reporters Friday. The committee's prime time hearing Thursday was initially viewed as framing its most explosive evidence yet, the story of Trump's inaction, while thousands of rioters battered Capitol Police, forcing Congress, Pence, and a building full of aides to flee on the day lawmakers were required to count electoral votes showing Joe Biden defeated Trump. As new material pours in and a potential second round of hearings gets slated for the fall, though, this week looks more like a season finale than a series ender. Okay. Putting it in terms that even Donald Trump can understand. Ratings are everything. Season finale, not a show ender. Okay. Well, let's see. Other news in the spirit of this. We have a couple of other bits to add to this. Where is this? I'm going to scroll down. There was a profile of another lawyer involved in all this. John Eastman's mention reminded me that perhaps we might want to bring this one up and take a look and add another name to the mix here. The New York Times producing this report, and I know a lot of you don't like it when I read the New York Times, or when anybody reads the New York Times, especially when Maggie Haberman is involved, as she is here. She shares a byline with Luke Broadwater. If the reporting's solid, or really, it doesn't even matter. I just want to bring another name into the lineup just in case it becomes important later on. Little-known lawyer pitched Trump on extreme plans to subvert election. Who is this person? It's an Olson, and it's not a Ted Olson either. It's William J. Olson. The role of William J. Olson in advising the president in late 2020, which has not previously been disclosed, shows how fringe figures were influencing him at a critical time. And that's a storyline we shouldn't let go of, which, again, remember, Trump is susceptible to influence by the last voice he hears before doing anything. And the more of those voices that turn out to be fringe lunatics, the worse it is for America and the world, because he's the leader of the free world, ostensibly, in holding that office. Let's see what they have to report here. Around 5 in the afternoon on Christmas Day in 2020, when people were done unwrapping their brand new guns and were already shooting themselves with them. Okay, I editorialized on that part. But around 5 in the afternoon on Christmas in 2020, as many Americans were celebrating with family and in the emergency room, President Donald J. Trump was at his Mar-a-Lago, his Per-a-Lago home in Palm Beach, Florida, on the phone with a little-known conservative lawyer who was encouraging his attempts to overturn the election, according to a memo the lawyer later wrote documenting the call. Ah, yes, this reminds me. Oh, I'd have to scroll back a ways to find it, but I retweeted somebody's comment about this article, and I think this is how the article came to my attention. But I'd like to credit the persons for it, but I might have to search later. The comment was, I hate seeing Olson here referred to as a conservative lawyer. He's a lunatic, fringe, kook lawyer here, and there's nothing conservative whatsoever about what he's proposing. So, interesting point, once again, about using old and outdated labels for this stuff. This is, yeah, it's true. There's nothing conservative about it. I thought it was an excellent point. I'll see if I can find it later on just so I can credit the person. But that was certainly the gist of the comment. I was stringing it out a little bit, hoping I would find it during this. There it is. I did. I made it right to the end. Mark Jacob, who tweets with a 16 on the end of his name. Mark Jacob, 16, ex-editor at Chicago Tribune and Sun-Times. Is this the person we hear from all the time in Greg's Roundup? It might be. The profile rings a bell. And he says, I hate to see William Olson described as a conservative lawyer when this New York Times story makes it clear he's a fascist traitor. I don't believe I used those terms, so I didn't do it justice. He wasn't pushing for a cap on federal spending or a repeal of Obamacare. He was calling for martial law. Conservative my ass. So, okay. I mean, that's not a call for doing anything to his ass. It's just an expression. If you were wondering, what does he mean, conservative my ass? How do I do that? The answer is, you have no certain responsibility there. It's just an expression. Okay, so Maggie and Luke, what else have you to say here? The lawyer William J. Olson was promoting several extreme ideas to the president. Olson later conceded that part of his plan could be regarded as tantamount to declaring martial law, and that another aspect could invite comparisons to Watergate. Two amazing, awesome things to compare your legal theories to. The plan included tampering with the Justice Department and firing the acting Attorney General, then Jeffrey Rosen, according to the December 28th memo by Mr. Olson titled Preserving Constitutional Order, which sounds conservative but really isn't, because the constitutional order was that Donald Trump was no longer president within a few days, and Joe Biden would be, and this sought to overturn that. That's bad for constitutional order. But you know how it is with these guys. Here's a quote from the memo, Our little band of lawyers is working on a memorandum that explains exactly what you can do, Mr. Olson wrote in his memo, which means that there was a memo saying that a memo was coming. That's very interesting. This memo, obtained by the New York Times, in which he had marked privileged and confidential and sent to the president. The media will call this martial law, he wrote, adding that, quote, that is fake news. We'll see. The document highlights the previously unreported role of Mr. Olson in advising Mr. Trump as the president was increasingly turning to extreme far-right figures outside the White House to pursue options that many of his official advisors had told him were impossible or unlawful in an effort to cling to power. So, the message here, Mark Jacobs' message, is noted by the writers here. They do come right out and say, well, this is a far-right extreme figure. Why he gets the, kid glove treatment of being a conservative lawyer, I don't know. But it's headline shorthand, I guess, but bad shorthand. The involvement of a person like Mr. Olson, who now represents the conspiracy theorist and MyPillow chief executive Mike Lindell, underscores how the system that would normally insulate a president from rogue actors operating outside of official channels had broken down within weeks after the 2020 election. That's a very important point. That left Mr. Trump in direct contact with people who promoted conspiracy theories or questionable legal ideas, telling him not only what he wanted to hear, but also that they, not the public servants advising him, were the only ones he could trust. In our long conversation earlier this week, I could hear the shameful and dismissive attitude of the lawyer from the White House counsel's office toward you personally. but more importantly, toward the office of the President of the United States itself. Yes, this is unacceptable. An interesting ploy here. Very shrewd, I think, of Olson to play to Trump's incredible ego in all of this and say, I was listening to the lawyers. They were treating you and the office of the presidency with such contempt. You can't stand for this. You have to bring me in instead. Very clever. It was not immediately clear how Mr. Olson, who practices law in Washington, D.C. and Virginia, arrived in Mr. Trump's orbit. He was probably spotted on television. Mr. Olson previously worked with Republican super PACs and promoted a conspiracy theory that Vice President Kamala Harris is not eligible to be vice president, falsely claiming she is not a natural-born U.S. citizen. Another one of these, a new generation birther. Probably just a holdover. He was probably an old generation birther, too. He and his firm have long represented Gun Owners of America, an advocacy group. It doesn't really do it justice to just call them an advocacy group. They're a more extreme version of the NRA. According to his website, which displays a photograph of him shaking hands with President Richard Nixon, Olson was a White House intern in 1971. That's not particularly interesting, but, still displaying you shaking hands with Nixon is something. Anyway, his 2020 memo was written 10 days after one of the most dramatic meetings ever held in the Trump White House, during which 3 of the president's White House advisors vied, at one point almost physically, with outside actors to influence Mr. Trump. In that meeting on December 18th, the lawyers Sidney Powell and Michael T. Flynn, notorious spy, and former national security advisor, pushed for Mr. Trump to seize voting machines and appoint Ms. Powell special counsel to investigate wild and groundless claims of voter fraud, even as White House lawyers fought back. We've heard all about that meeting in the last couple of days, and reminder of Peter Strzok's comment about this, that they throw in Overstock.com guy again back into the mix. We have 3 people in the Oval Office, all of whom are suspected of being under the influence of Russian agents at the time, and that's kind of weird and dangerous. Ordinarily, they don't get in, much less 3 of them to fight with White House advisors and try to coax the president into overthrowing the current U.S. government. It's an odd thing. But the document suggests that even after his aides had won that skirmish in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump continued to seek extreme legal advice that ran counter to the recommendations of the Justice Department and the counsel's office. And the memo indicates that Trump was acting on the outside advice. At one point, it refers to the president urging Mr. Olson to contact the acting attorney general about having the Justice Department lend its credibility to Trump's legal efforts to invalidate the election results. Now, that effort was already underway directly from Trump, but he tries to enlist Olson in doing more of the same. I don't know why or to what end, or rather, why he thought that would help his efforts at all, but I guess he just figured the more voices, the better, and it's not an illogical assumption, I guess, on its face. A person familiar with the work of the House committee investigating the January 6th attack said the committee was aware that Olson was in contact with Trump and that it was exploring Olson's role in pushing forward plans to overturn the 2020 election. Olson did not respond to requests for comment. A spokesperson for Trump did not respond to requests for comment about the former president's relationship with Mr. Olson. I'm sure he's a coffee boy once they finally speak up. According to this memo, Olson was discussing with Trump the notion that the Justice Department would intercede with the Supreme Court to reverse his electoral defeat. The court had declined to hear a case that allies of Mr. Trump in Texas had brought challenging the election results in Pennsylvania, saying the plaintiffs lacked standing. That's the biggest joke of the whole thing. But okay. Mr. Olson told Mr. Trump that he believed the Justice Department will do nothing except continue to run out the clock. While time to act was short when we spoke on Christmas Day, time is about to run out, he wrote. And I guess it's worth reminding everybody that this is how Trump spent his Christmas, talking on the phone with lunatic lawyers trying to steal back the election. it's not such a big deal to me because I would spend my Christmas having Chinese food and seeing the movies if it was up to me. But, not everybody, I guess, spends their Christmas doing Christmassy things. It's not sacred to everyone. And, Trump is probably the last person on earth that you would think, well, he's not going to be like spending the day in worship anywhere, that's for sure. Or even with his family, because he doesn't particularly like them either. Anyway, it was unclear which White House lawyer Olson described as dismissive in his memo. At the time, the White House counsel, Patsy Baloney, plus also Patrick Philbin, his deputy, and another lawyer who did not work for the counsel's office, Eric Hirschman, were working in tandem to push back on some of the more outlandish ideas being recommended. Mr. Cipollone and Mr. Hirschman had taken lead roles during the December 18th White House meeting in countering Powell and Flynn. The feeling I had was not just was he offering you, not offering you any opinions. It's an odd sentence. But again, this is from Olson's note to Trump. The feeling I had was that not just was he not offering you any options, whoever the lawyer is, he's thinking that he heard, but that he was there to make certain you did not consider any, Olson wrote, referring to the unnamed White House lawyer. But you do have options, he continues. Among those whom Mr. Olson mentioned as speaking to Trump about the Justice Department getting involved was Mark Martin. Not the NASCAR driver, but there is one. The former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, which, as I think about it, maybe it could be the same. I mean, it's not the same person. But in North Carolina, if you're electing the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, you might very well elect a NASCAR driver. That is a possibility. White House officials believed at the time that Mr. Martin was brought in through Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff. Mr. Olson urged Mr. Trump to hire another lawyer, Kurt Olson. I don't know whether there's any relationship or not. That wouldn't surprise me, but you'd think that they would say so right here. Maybe it's in the next paragraph. Olson urges Trump to hire another Olson, who had worked on the Texas case, which the Supreme Court had unanimously declined to hear. Anyway, as I emailed Molly Saturday morning, Mr. Olson wrote, referring to Mr. Trump's assistant, we began acting on your question about our team revising the complaint filed by Texas into what could be the first draft of a complaint filed by the United States. The lawyers with whom I have been working took on that task, and we now have a draft that could be presented to you for review and by you to Mr. Rosen to edit, improve, and file. In his memo, Olson recounted that during their discussions, he had told Mr. Trump that he had followed the president's suggestion to call Mr. Rosen a few hours earlier, requesting that the acting attorney general file a lawsuit to try to block Joe Biden's electoral college victory. Trump, based on Olson's memo, was aware that Rosen was slow-walking his request. The suit was never filed. Rosen testified last month before the January 6th committee that doing so was out of the bounds of the law. A spokesman for Rosen said that he did not recall speaking with Olson, but that it was accurate that the acting attorney general was against filing any lawsuits to interfere with the election results. At the time of the memo, Trump had decamped to Mar-a-Lago, but Olson encouraged him to return to Washington to fight the election results from his perch in the White House. Trump did do so shortly thereafter, working through the holidays on challenging the election results, because that's what's of primary importance to him. I do not believe that you can do what is required to be done from Florida, Olson wrote to the president, and it would send a message about your commitment to the task to leave Mar-a-Lago to take charge at the White House. I urge you to return as soon as it can be arranged. Olson encouraged Trump to fire or reassign Rosen should he not go along with the plans to use the Justice Department to challenge the election in court, though Olson acknowledged such an action would draw negative news coverage. This step will likely bring on 1,000 stories, making an analogy to the Saturday Night Massacre in 1973, when President Nixon ordered Attorney General Elliot Richardson to fire Archibald Cox as special counsel investigating Watergate, he wrote. And, of course, the comparison would be made because it would be a direct comparison. It's the most obvious comparison you could possibly make, and it's the correct one. But Olson also urged changes at the White House counsel's office. He wrote that a new White House counsel should take steps to ensure a fair election count, though he conceded that that would be seen by the news media as martial law. It would be. Bringing in a White House counsel to run campaign election issues would be awful in its own right. Firing the already incumbent White House counsel over his refusal to mix politics with governance would, of course, also bring a lot of negative reporting. But hey, don't worry about it. After Mr. Trump left office, Olson joined the legal team of Mike Lindell, who has promoted a series of conspiracy theories about the election and has been sued for defamation by a former employee of Dominion Voting Systems. Lindell, who crashed the Oval Office in the final days of the presidency, which I always understood would get you shot or arrested, hoping that Mr. Trump would still take action related to the election, was adamant that Mr. Trump would be reinstated as president in 2021, something that was not possible. Mr. Lindell sued the January 6th committee, seeking to block the panel's subpoena to Verizon for his call logs. The suit, which Mr. Olson filed along with other lawyers, argued that Mr. Lindell's communications about his objections to the 2020 election were protected speech, in part because they were tied to his religious beliefs. Oh boy. I mean, it's a good excuse. You can try it. Just throw everything you can at the wall and see what sticks. Okay, so there you go. That's the end of the article, and it's also the end of the hour here. And we're just about at the top of the hour break. Well, that was really something. He's really kind of you had to add his name to the mix, I think. Another crazy who I'm sure will pop up as time goes on. But at the very least, just more evidence that Trump was continuing to look for other excuses, other reasons to continue the fight, even after the crazy unhinged meeting, as they called it in the last round of reporting, was tamped down by White House counsel and I guess additional counsel from outside. It never ended for this guy, and it still hasn't. He's crazy. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. There was about 15 thoughts that occurred to me during the closing of that article that I now forget, but I'm pretty sure that there was stuff back there somewhere in pocket that I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to add this to the mix. And we might just stick to the January 6th hearings and what they're revealing and the surrounding stories all day here, even though there are other stories to get to. As a matter of fact, though, as I was closing it out and looking to what might come next, up popped a tweet from Talking Points Memo with their own addition to the reporting, this time on NASCAR driver / North Carolina Chief Justice Mark Martin. It's not the same guy, I don't think, but I really love hedging on this. I mean, if any state's going to do it, right? I don't know where is Mark Martin, the driver, actually from? I got to look that up. I'm going to have to say NASCAR on this to make sure I get the right Mark Martin. Let's see. All right, we'll get this one. Mm-hmm. He's retired? Okay. I mean, I don't keep up with it. He's been driving since forever, so it doesn't surprise me that he's retired. But I don't keep up with retirements. When did he retire? Does it say? That's not in his profile. Anyway, where is he originally from? That's what I'm really interested in. Do they have this easily findable? Born in Batesville, Arkansas, and began his racing career as a young man on the dirt tracks of Arkansas. He moved on to asphalt racing, in case you're wondering about that, and joined the ASA racing series about the time that Arkansas itself moved on to asphalt, I guess. So, well-timed. Anyway, How old is he here? He's 63 years old. So, yeah, probably about time that he retired. And I don't know when it was, but let's see. Maybe we'll do it. Does anybody care? I don't know. I'm sure it's of some interest here. Let's see. Post-racing career. On July 31st, 2014, Martin tweeted that he'd become a driver development coach. How about that? So I guess somewhere before 2014, he retired. There it is. In November of 2013, he announced he would not race in 2014, but he didn't use the word retirement. He remained involved in racing and apparently also on the North Carolina Supreme Court. So, no reason to believe that it's the same person, of course, because it isn't, but I just think it's funny. Anyway, former North Carolina Chief Justice advised Trump on election overthrow suit, memo says, reports Matt Schuham at Talking Points memo, and that was just making the rounds. Now, let's see if there's any additional information to glean from this. It appears that Mark Martin, the former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, advised then President Donald Trump to have the Justice Department pursue a lawsuit in the Supreme Court to overturn the election, according to that December 28th memo revealed recently by the New York Times. It's interesting. I'm sure that there's something new and exciting in this, because if I had put these two items in pocket days ago, then I probably would have guessed, well, they probably overlap too much to bother reading the second one. But the fact that this one is being circulated now is dated today, just published minutes ago, and the fact that it pops up on my Twitter feed right after I finish this other article, which I remind you is from, I will tell you, is from July 16th. It's a couple of days ago. So the fact that it would pop up in the feed again now makes me wonder whether there is something extra here. The Times story on the memo focuses on its author, that's Olson. Olson has more recently been in the news for his representation of Mike Lindell, the pillow guy. In December of 2020, the Times reported Olson told Trump that he might have to fire DOJ officials who don't go along with the plan, warning Trump that critics would compare this to the Saturday Night Massacre and martial law, which, he's right about. But the memo revealed by the Times is also notable for its mention of Martin. In his opening paragraph, Olson notes that he knows Trump has recently spoken with Martin and that he supported filing the case. That's interesting for several reasons, including some I identified in exclusive reporting last year. And remember, we're talking about Matt Schuham here, and it's linked. I should take a look at what the exclusive reporting was, just out of curiosity. I'm going to open it up here. South Carolina AG, not North Carolina Supreme Court Justice, but South Carolina AG strategized with bigwig conservative lawyers, again, you should probably not call them conservative, on suit to overturn election records show. And that was, in fact, Matt Schuham reporting this just about this time last year, July 8th, 2021. By the way, who are we talking about? In the days before, South Carolina joined several other Republican-led states in a lawsuit to overturn the results. The state's attorney general received advice from a former North Carolina Chief Justice. Okay, we know who that is. Who's the South Carolina attorney general? Alan Wilson. Okay. That name I don't think has come up again. South Carolina was one of 17 states to sign on to amicus briefs in the case, signaling its support for the Texas fight, which was roundly rejected, and very quickly at that, in the Supreme Court. Okay, let's see. A lobbying campaign and a research effort is a section title here. That reporting, Schuham's reporting last year, based on emails sent around Thanksgiving of 2020 and obtained by the watchdog group American Oversight, showed that Martin was actively involved in lobbying support for Texas v. Pennsylvania. The headline, lawsuit to overturn the election results. The Texas Attorney General and indictee Ken Paxton asked the Supreme Court to review on December 8th, 2020. 17 states soon signed on to an amicus brief supporting it. The suit made the wild argument that the Supreme Court should void the results from 4 states that Biden won: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Michigan, and instead let the legislatures in those states determine which electors should be sent to the Electoral College. On December 11th, 2020, the Supreme Court rejected Texas's request for a review. The Times previously reported that Martin was an informal Trump advisor and part of a team of lawyers behind that lawsuit. The emails I reported showed that Martin communicated with South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson. I could have just gotten that information this way. Just days before Wilson announced that South Carolina would be one of the states to support the Texas suit. In another email, the author and attorney Don Brown, I don't think I know that guy, wrote to Wilson that he'd recently spoken with Martin. Martin, Brown said, had previewed an incoming report by Alliance Defending Freedom, the right-wing Christian legal organization. The report's evidentiary conclusions would be more difficult for the opposition to punch holes in, Brown relayed Martin, saying. Then, a tantalizing detail. Good, we're here for those. I'm told that the study was authorized a few weeks back at the highest levels, and that's in scare quotes itself, at the highest levels. Although I didn't ask the Chief Justice what he meant by that, and maybe you should have. But anyway, in all, the emails indicated a sophisticated effort to corral legal fodder to be used not only to argue a Supreme Court case, but also to convince state-level Republican officials that such a case was worth staking their reputations on. It wasn't. A spokesperson for Martin told me last year that he could not discuss, quote, private or privileged conversations. Well, we'll see whether privilege holds up if your name is ever called. I doubt that it would be. Michael Farris, CEO of Alliance Defending Freedom and a contact point named several times in the email, confirmed. I communicated with Attorney General Wilson about legal and constitutional questions regarding the election, but he denied being personally involved in producing any reports on the same subject. Representatives for High Point University, where Martin was recently named the incoming founding dean of a new law school. They should end that. Did not return TPM's request for comment. High Point University, I know very little about High Point University except this, that they are apparently very frequently rated as having the nicest dorms, or at least the best freshman dorms, or something like that. I know that because they are in close competition with that, with the frequently named, on this program, Christopher Newport University, which put a lot of money into these beautiful dorms, apparently. High Point University may have them beat on that. They're the only place that consistently come up with having better dorms for some reason. Anyway, has nothing to do with anything, but interesting to know that another trader has landed a nice, cushy perch in the university system somewhere. Okay, High Point University. Keep them in mind, I guess. Martin has a long history with Trump. How about that? In July of 2016, while he was still North Carolina's top judge, a reporter spotted him backstage at a Trump rally. That seems unusual, but I guess if they're elected judges, that's maybe more tolerable somehow in North Carolina. And on the evening of January 6th, Martin was among the first people Trump spoke to as police worked to re-secure Congress slowly, according to Trump's White House diary. Next up, governments no longer run elections. That in scare quotes. That's the next section header. Martin has not spoken much publicly about his reported work on Texas's headline lawsuit to overturn the election, but in a previously unreported December 9th speech at a Rotary Club in Chesapeake, Virginia. Really. One day after the lawsuit was filed, and on the same day that Wilson joined 16 other Republican attorneys general across the country in filing an amicus brief supporting the suit, he gave his thoughts on the election and legal disputes around it. And the quotes are, "Really, our governments no longer run elections. It's run by a patchwork of private companies with little or no oversight," Martin said near the start of his remarks, later asserting, "We don't even make sure you're a citizen before you vote in the United States." What a great attorney general this is. Though Martin did not say anything about being personally involved in the legal effort to overturn the election, the remarks shed some light on his thinking about the election. Okay, somewhere along the line I got the idea that Wilson was the one who's speaking here, but no, it was just that it happened on the same day. Martin's speech in Chesapeake was on the same day Wilson joined 16 other Republican AGs in filing the case. Though Martin did not say anything about being personally involved in a legal effort to overturn the election, the remarks shed some light on his thinking about the election. Martin cited, quote, IT experts to argue that, again, quote, every aspect of our election system is susceptible to hacking, unquote. He said he had spoken to federal and state officials, that too a quote, about the election system. Well, so what? Interestingly, given the timing of his speech, the interesting part about the timing being that the Supreme Court would reject Texas versus Virginia 2 days later on December 11th, Martin complained about the hundreds of lawsuits filed nationwide ahead of the 2020 election, many of which sought to make voting easier during the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic. In this most recent election, the statutes that should have applied to the election really didn't, he said. Courts had rewritten the rules, and any internal controls we had for absentee ballots or mail-in ballots were largely non-existent. Maybe that was justified in an era of COVID, or maybe there were those that tried to take advantage of that situation for their own ends. History will tell us the answer to that, and they did. Just the other day, the AP reported that pretty much everybody in America who had anything to do with administering the use of drop boxes says there were no problems with the drop boxes and no credible evidence of any shenanigans of any consequence. Oh well, history told us. That complaint paralleled the core argument in the Texas suit, which alleged that non-legislative actors, such as judges and election officials, had so extensively changed election rules in 4 Biden voting states that the Republican-controlled legislatures in those states ought to be able to ignore the will of the people and assign their electors to Trump. It's the independent state legislature theory gone wild. Or, as the former Chief Justice put it to one questioner at the Rotary Club, the primary prayer for relief is that the 4 states not be allowed for their electors to vote next Monday. They wanted to cancel out the votes of 4 whole states because, horror of horrors, more people in those states preferred Joe Biden to Donald Trump. And so therefore they shouldn't be allowed to speak, because we love the Constitution so much. All right, well, that's a new one and a new name to add to the list. Is there anything bouncing around in my head that reminds me of what I wanted to share with you in the last minutes of this segment? And the answer is, if it was related to this story, then I guess I just don't know what it is. But, okay. Let's see. Oh, there are a few other things. What can we, what's the most important thing to add here? Hey, I don't know. Let's try this one, though. Mark Joseph Stern, tweeting now several days ago. When is this tweet from? July 8th. He, of course, according to his bio on Twitter, which I would never have been able to recite to you from memory, senior writer at Slate. He tweeted on the Wisconsin shenanigans in trying to overturn the election results. The Wisconsin Supreme Court decision prohibiting ballot drop boxes. There's a new one, and it's relatively new. Again, he's writing on July 8th. But they've now put out a decision prohibiting ballot drop boxes, I guess also based on this stupid theory that, one, state legislatures are the only ones who can authorize drop boxes and the use of drop boxes. It can't be done by delegated authority, according to people who are sore losers and are motivated in their reasoning. Drop boxes now should be against the rules. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court basically has come out now and said that, and apparently packed their opinion with more garbage. So now that's officially on the record as endorsed by the state Supreme Court. As he puts it, the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision prohibiting ballot drop boxes includes outrageously irresponsible language, questioning the legitimacy of the 2020 election results, and drawing comparisons to elections in North Korea and Syria. Really. And there's a direct link to the published opinion itself. He's got a couple of screen grabs to illustrate, I guess, what he means by this outrageous language. And we'll begin with this part. If the right to vote, if the right to vote is to have any meaning at all, elections must be conducted according to law. I think we can all agree with that. Throughout history, tyrants have claimed electoral victory via elections conducted in violation of governing law. Have they? I mean, they have, I'm sure. Of course, they've also claimed victory via elections conducted in compliance with governing law, and that might mean actual compliance with actual law or the fact that they are the law, but who knows? Anyway, for example, they say, and remember what they're talking about here, American elections. They're now saying, let's talk about Saddam Hussein, reportedly being elected in 2002 by a unanimous vote of all eligible voters in Iraq. 11,445,638 people, they note parenthetically. Examples of such corruption are replete in history. In the 21st century, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was elected in 2014 with 100% of the vote, while his father, Kim Jong-il, previously won 99.9% of the vote. Former president of Cuba, Raul Castro, won 99.4% of the vote in 2008, while Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was elected with 97.6% of the vote in 2007. All of which is, of course, inapposite to anything. But okay, even if citizens of such nations are allowed to check a box on a ballot, they possess only a hollow right. Their rulers derive their power from force and fraud, not the people's consent. By contrast, in Wisconsin, elected officials derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, not in any other states, though, I guess. Though, I mean, that's a little strange as a segue into discussing voting rights in Wisconsin. The right to vote presupposes the rule of law governs elections. If elections are conducted outside of the law, and it's not clear that they were in those other countries, they just have terrible law, the people have not conferred their consent on the government. Yeah, generally speaking, but of course it's conclusory. I mean, you're just saying that having drop boxes is outside of the law. It's not quite the same as we'll murder you if you don't vote for al-Assad or Hussein, right? That's not what's happening here. They're just saying you have the right to vote. You can vote in secret. You can fill out your ballot, the same ballot we would give you if you did it by mail, but instead of using a stamp, just put it in one of these official boxes that's locked up at night and is guarded and under 24-hour surveillance and officially sanctioned, and we'll just pick it up. Why give it to an outside agency to deliver it back to the agency that's supposed to be processing it in the first place when you can deliver it directly to us? Why duplicate the effort? Why have more people involved? Why have more hands on your ballot? It's actually more secure. But they say, oh, it's actually the same thing as Saddam Hussein. Yeah, and we hanged Saddam Hussein, so maybe we should be hanging all of our elections officials. And they would probably agree with that. I'm sort of thinking I would agree with hanging them. So maybe we're on an even footing here. Anyway, the right to vote presupposes the rule of law, presupposes that the rule of law governs elections. If they're conducted outside the law, the people have not conferred their consent on government. Okay, yes. Such elections are unlawful, and their results are illegitimate, arguably. If an election can be procured by a party through artifice or corruption, the government may be the choice of a party for its own ends, not of the nation for the national good. That, according to John Adams, speaking in his inaugural address on March 4th, 1797. Okay, he did say that. Is it relevant? We don't know. The jump from there to the Wisconsin voters' injury, in fact, is substantially more concrete than the remote injuries we have recognized as sufficient in the past, as we did in previous cases, which are here cited. The record indicates hundreds of ballot drop boxes have been set up in past elections, prompted by the memos, and thousands of votes have been cast via this, now here's the conclusory part, this unlawful method, thereby directly harming the Wisconsin voters. The illegality of these drop boxes weakens the people's faith in that the election produced an outcome reflective of their will. The Wisconsin voters and all lawful voters are injured when the institution charged with administering Wisconsin elections does not follow the law, leaving the results in question. So, huge leaps in logic, of course, here. But just wanted to, and this is what passes for opinions of the Wisconsin Supreme Court here. So I guess if you're wondering, well, gee whiz, I mean, the Wisconsin Supreme Court says this is serious and should be taken seriously. It's not very serious. Well, gee whiz, a former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court says there's a case here. Well, he might be an idiot too. As a matter of fact, back in Wisconsin, it's the former Chief Justice of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Was he Chief Justice? Gableman, who is driving all of this. So, while we're all debating the legitimacy of our Supreme Court, which, though not elected, is still in question, I don't know. I guess here, look to the states to figure out whether or not you think total idiots could be put in charge of Supreme Courts or not. Because it apparently is so. I mean, look what they've done here, right? They're saying, even if they're right, even if they are ultimately borne out on the independent state legislature theory and the theory that the state legislatures being allowed to determine the manner of the selection of their electors by the Constitution, and if that's supposed to mean, well, they get to declare, only the legislature can do anything about the elections. They have to administer even the most minute detail. And it's like, here at in Wisconsin, the drop boxes, they had the slow release anti-slamming device on the little doors. They're built like mailboxes, let's say, I don't know, I'm imagining, maybe they're not. And you pull the handle down so that the little chute thing opens up and you put your ballot in and you let it go. Now, in previous days, in the days of the founders, those things would slam shut. Let's say their argument goes. And now they have little triggering mechanisms on them that slowly close them so that there's no big loud clanging every time a ballot is dropped. The legislature did not say that this was allowed to be changed. They just changed it because they thought it would be good design and less annoying to the clerks whose offices, outside whose offices the drop box sits. And it was distracting them all day long to hear those bam, slams, and crashes every time someone would drop a ballot in. So they did something about it. But they didn't clear it through the legislature. Therefore, you see, that ballot box is illegal. I mean, that's a huge leap. Now, a normal court might say, well, we've considered everything. And while it's true that everything is supposed to go through the legislature, which, by the way, it is not true that everything is supposed to go through the legislature. I believe that lots of this stuff is delegable, but they could declare that we're all wrong and have thought very wrongly about elections for all this time, and they've revealed the secret meaning of the original text of the Constitution. It was buried on a golden tablet in Wisconsin, which wasn't part of the country at the time. Whatever. I mean, maybe we should only be... That's a good thought. Do you think I could get anywhere with the theory that says originalism says that the theory that you're bringing forward has to have originated in one of the 13 original colonies? If it's a California thinker, sorry, can't help you. That wasn't part of the United States at the founding. That's originalism. I doubt that would work, but you never know. These people are very stupid, and they may use it against us at some point in the near future. Anyway, what they're saying is, if the legislature didn't authorize it specifically, that is therefore illegal. And if it's therefore illegal, all sorts of illegalities are exactly the same as Saddam Hussein, Bashar al-Assad, Kim Il-jung, what are the other Kim Ils that we have? They named them both. It's Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un. Did I say Kim Il-sung? That's wrong, isn't it? Or was that the original dictator? That was probably it, right? The first North Korean dictator. And then his son, Kim Jong-il, and then his son, Kim Jong-un. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Anyway, all of them are terrible, and we hate them very much. Raul Castro, yada, yada. They all cheated in elections, and therefore they are exactly the same as Wisconsin not having its legislature approve the drop boxes. I mean, there's no allegation here that anybody has filled out their ballot under any coercion. No allegation here that they've filled out their ballots incorrectly. No allegation that they've filled out multiple ballots. No allegation, although there's insinuation that someone somewhere, what was it? Well, Mark Martin was saying, well, they didn't even check your nationality and citizenship status, which they did, of course. just as we found out recently, just I don't know, totally different situation. Well, they didn't file the report about this rape in Ohio or Indiana. Oh, actually they did? Oh, okay. Well, the point is we've said that they didn't, and that's interesting to people. All these things, that all these illegalities are exactly the same. That's a huge leap, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. But they're not, which is weird. Okay, as we near the break towards our last segment, I'll simply wrap up by saying, I don't know, something. A comment that came in along the way from our friend Mighty OCD saying, asking the question, is anyone still trying to get the B-roll stuff from The Apprentice back when they taped those things? And the various people who had various roles in that production insisted that the B-roll outtakes from the tape there would reveal that Donald Trump was, the nasty kind of person who shouldn't be president. I doubt it. I doubt anyone is still trying to get that because we're still trying to figure out what happened with the whole treason thing. But at any rate, there you go. I don't know what to tell you. They're probably not looking at that, and I wish they would. By the way, some breaking news I can squeeze in between now and the end of the segment here. Ohio Supreme Court has struck down the congressional map, ruling the map is gerrymandered to the benefit of Republicans and violates the state's constitution. They're not giving up. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter joining us here, and I guess we're planning our calendar as we speak too. You're out for the next 2 weeks. Okay. Well, you're back today.
Back today.
Okay, but I'll make a note of it. It's a busy time for you there. Is it a good reason, like fun, to be out for 2 weeks?
I was going to be moving into a new house, but that deal fell through.
Okay. But now it's just staycation?
Finding a different new house.
Oh, okay. So some work to be done. All right. Well, we'll wish you luck, and you want us all to send you like Zillow listings or something if we find something good?
No, that's okay.
Okay. You can do it yourself. Independent state real estate looker.
Yes.
That's happening here. Okay. Well, very good. I hope that goes well, and you're settled soon. But thank you for joining us today. So, many things happening. And it's been a while since we spoke.
While you're talking about independent state legislatures,
yeah.
How about independent county election boards?
Oh, sure. How independent are we
3
talking?
counties in Pennsylvania are still refusing to certify the election results from their primary.
Oh, okay. Why and which ones?
Our friend Adam Bonin helped bring that to our attention.
Yeah. So are they? We've heard stories like that. I don't know if they're from Pennsylvania, but where Republicans were refusing to certify their own primaries.
Their own primary election. Yeah, it's Pennsylvania.
Are they Republicans?
At least. I don't know if there are other states where this is happening. But these 3 counties, Adam says they've got about 1 million voters in the 3 counties, are refusing to comply with a state court order that they certify the results from legally cast ballots in the GOP primary.
Huh. Well, that'll be fun.
Instead of the ballots that they want to count.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember whether it was from Pennsylvania or another state, but we definitely had this. And then they had a writ of mandamus issued, and I guess they got 2 people to agree to issue the report. So they issued the report, but one guy figured out, they don't need my vote. I'm going to continue to be the holdout. But it worked to that extent, but I don't think it was Pennsylvania. But I imagine the same outcome eventually. comes around. Do you have is there, you say Adam Bonin brought it up, is there an article or posting somewhere that...
Yes, from Democracy Docket from Mark Elias. I will send that off to you.
Yeah, and everyone will want to read that, and will want to figure out which counties it is and where they are. And but are they all Republican counties refusing to certify a Republican primary result, or...
I do not know. I do not know, because I was writing a different story. I was just...
but this is a very interesting one. We'll check it out.
I'm going to be writing this one coming up. So.
I mean, we're waiting for an evolution towards even more chaos. I suppose if a Republican-controlled county election officials start refusing to certify Democratic primary winners on top of their own, that would represent sort of an evolution towards their eventual goal, which is to just throw out the general election results. But they haven't had a chance to do that yet. But I guess this is the dress rehearsal. Okay, well, I'll be interested to find that out. And what were you doing when you were interrupted with this story?
Oh, writing about what Congress is going to do today.
Oh, well, are they doing something?
Well, yeah, the House is actually doing something important.
Let's find out.
And something that the Senate needs to do as well. They are responding to, they're taking time out of their schedule. They're trying to get spending bills done. Taking time out to codify marriage equality and access to birth control and same-sex relationships.
Okay.
All of those things that Judge Clarence Thomas decided to put on notice in his concurrence on the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade.
It was almost considerate of him to say so that we could be on notice. I don't know why he tipped his hand, but I guess he thought it would be fun. And I think he probably thinks it's either he thinks it's a lock and he's got the votes for it, or it's just a pipe dream and it's never coming to fruition. But either way, it pays to be cautious. A lot of people wish we had codified Roe beforehand, and I guess that's what's driving this now. Okay, so they're acting. That's terrific. I mean, we'll see where the Senate moves, but this is how it starts. It has to be done.
The Senate needs to move. The Senate has to move. They've got to put all of those Republicans in this midterm year on the record saying, do you think your constituents should be able to use birth control? Really? Do you think so?
Question.
Well then.
Yeah, and here, so it's a little more than your typical messaging bill here. It's really, in light of the fact that the Supreme Court has just overturned a 50-year precedent, something that you thought was settled law because the people who overturned it told you it was, they lied. Then maybe, ordinarily you would say this is nonsense and just messaging, but it's not. In fact, even if they think that someone will filibuster it and ruin it in the Senate, you're gonna have to ask this question because the court is threatening to overturn it.
Yes.
So answer, please.
And you have to make Republicans say publicly.
Yeah.
Besides Ted Cruz, who we know.
Either you're for it or against it. And you could be lying too, just like the Supreme Court justices did in their nomination hearings. I understand that. But either spew your lie now or decline to, and we'll just know that you were hiding from it.
Right.
And you meant to lie, but you just didn't have the guts.
As of now, the only person supporting the same-sex marriage legislation is in the Senate is Susan Collins. She's the only Republican.
Okay. Well, she is deeply concerned about it, I'm sure.
Ted Cruz is saying, oh, no, Thomas was absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Ted.
Obergefell was wrongly concluded, just like Roe was wrongly concluded, and that's something that's all entirely up to the state. Entirely up to the state.
Well, yeah, that's Ted for you.
That's Ted, but, that's also the spear point of where Republicans are going. Absolutely marriage equality is on the ballot. Absolutely birth control is on the ballot because these crazy Republicans, these crazy Christo-fascists want it to be. And they're in the ascent. They're the minority, yes, the vast minority, but they are in the ascent and they've taken over the Republican Party. So
yeah.
We need to, rip that mask off and make it absolutely clear to the entire country that this is what's going on.
Well, a good effort, and so that is it on the floor of the House today already?
The marriage bill will be on the floor today. The contraception bill probably tomorrow or Thursday.
Okay. Interesting order that they've chosen for it, too.
Yeah.
A very conservative chronological order. Ordinarily,
reverse chronological, I guess.
I'm thinking, like, in reality out there, most people are like, well, let's see, first the birth control, and then if we're going to get married, terrific. But, now they're being 1950s conservative. Well, you see, marriage first, you see. Then the birth control. Because, well, that was the original, the original case that they had to fight about it in Griswold was, don't married couples have the right to this? Geez, come on, they're married.
Right.
They can make this decision for themselves. And that was the way you needed to frame it in order to get courts to say, all right, sure, fine, okay, they deserve privacy. And then later, but also, by the way, doesn't everybody else deserve that privacy? Okay, sure, eventually.
Yeah.
All right.
The other important thing about this is keeping it at the fore. I wrote a little bit about this on Roe this morning on abortion, but it's also true for the contraceptive thing. We're seeing actual on the ground, in reality, the results of this, of Roe. It's,
yes.
women's lives being threatened. But also we're seeing that companies like Walgreens, their employees are refusing to fill birth control prescriptions. They're refusing to allow, they've, put the condoms and the over-the-counter contraceptives behind the counter and are refusing to give them to people.
Oh, well, I thought it's not enough that you have to, like, embarrass yourself by announcing what you want to everyone so that then they'll deny it to you on top of it.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Walgreens, eh? Okay.
Walgreens, but, that's certainly not nationally, although a national boycott is in order because it's happening in some stores in some states. Refusing to dispense condoms.
That seems unwise, but
and that is something that has to be put out in front of people. That this is actually happening. People being voters who have to think about these things and have to know who's doing this to them.
Yeah.
And it's true of the abortion stories too. There's just been a flood of them.
Yes.
Since.
Yeah, and I don't know whether anybody
decision, and it's important because activists and advocates knew all of these stories from the red states. They knew, the people on Medicaid were having this problem because of the Hyde Amendment. They knew that lots of states and Catholic hospitals, for example, were refusing to give dying women abortions to save their lives, and how difficult it was for pregnant people to get the treatment that they needed in a lot of situations. Now that's happening at a much larger scale. It's much more confusing for everybody, and it's really important that these stories be out in front of the public all of the time because this is our reality now. Yeah,
and interesting too. I'm sure that the forces on the anti-abortion side are angry, frustrated, and upset about the flood of stories. Well, it used to be you didn't talk about this stuff. Of course,
right.
When it was everyone's right to take care of it and they didn't have to appeal to public opinion to take care of their own health, it was quiet because it was a right. And now that it's not, you're the ones that are pushing this into the public conscience. Now every case has to be brought to the court of public opinion because the court of actual legal opinion says you're not entitled to this anymore.
Right.
This is your doing.
And you see that the problem that puts them in, the difficult position it puts them in, you saw it last week in both House and Senate hearings on the issue, where, Eric Swalwell was asking one of the National Right to Life people about the 10-year-old girl from Ohio who had to go to Indiana to get treated after a rape. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, that's not an abortion.
Right. So
10-year-old being treated after a rape because she's pregnant, getting rid of the pregnancy is not an abortion in that case.
Yeah, it's something that you don't have to feel guilty about. It's an abortion. Is what it is.
Josh Hawley's wife said the same thing in a Senate hearing that, when absolutely. If the mother's life has to be saved, if it's a life and death situation, terminating the pregnancy isn't an abortion.
Well, right.
Of course,
Wrong.
Of course it is, and of course they know it is. I mean,
It's a really
Idaho's
interesting
Republican
tactic.
Party put in its platform this weekend. There is no exception for the health of the mother. Abortion is abortion, and if it kills the woman carrying the child, well, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that's where they really are. But when they're embarrassed, they say, well, we are still, that's the face-saving way of saying, I'm still prohibiting all abortions. I'm just saying that the abortions that I allow are not abortions. So you can't blame me for allowing abortion. I just said it's not an abortion. What are you talking about? Of course it is. There's no other name for it.
No, terminating a pregnancy is abortion.
And it's because it's a
for
necessary
whatever
thing.
reason is being done. It's an abortion.
Yep. I find it really interesting. There's so many fronts on which they are denying this. In addition to answering when it's uncomfortable in a hearing, you just say it's not an abortion. In the Ohio case, Ohio Republicans are saying, oh, it's not true that she had to leave and go to Indiana because our law is actually very forgiving and has exceptions, except it doesn't have that.
Except it doesn't. And the guy who wrote it, the National Right to Life guy from Indiana, interestingly, who wrote the legislation that passed in Ohio, said, no, there's no exception. And that 10-year-old, like every other woman, he said this, the 10-year-old, like every other woman who's been raped and had to have a child, will see the benefit of it.
That's, terrific. What benefits? And everybody pointing out, when they refer to them as women, 10-year-olds, not women, quite young, elementary school, as they say, would have still been, had she been a resident of Newtown, Connecticut, would have been in the Sandy Hook Elementary School, which ends at 4th grade. That's how young we're talking about. Not just, or I'm just thinking back to what conservatives often think about kids in elementary school. One, they're women, and they should be forced to carry kids to term. And two, why don't the 6th graders, the huskier ones, fling themselves at school shooters? The responsibilities they're putting on the kids. The people who are always saying, won't someone please think of the children? As adults, apparently, is how we're supposed to think of the children.
Yes.
As linebackers, no less.
We don't think of the children. We only think of the fetus.
Yes.
And that's true in Idaho, too. Idaho, which still is allowing the faith healing law that allows parents to withhold medical treatment from their kids.
Okay. As you said that, I'm doing the Tucker Carlson knitting my brow in concerned confusion, but I'm genuinely confused. Wait a minute. What law now? Okay. Yeah. So for people who believe that they don't want medicine.
That it's God's will that their kid is born with a simple heart defect that could be fixed quickly with surgery. No, they will not allow that surgery. That child, a friend of mine has gone through this. That child will live her entire shortened life with the complications of not having that simple surgery that could have been done when she was born. And many of them will die from these simple things that, illnesses that are completely preventable. Children will die because of these things because their parents can withhold medical treatment.
Okay. Well,
and lots of little kids in Idaho have been dying because of this extreme faith group that's there, a crazy Mormon group. And Idaho's fine with that.
Okay.
Because pro-life.
I guess so. It results in death, but it's a lot of internal conflicts and all of this.
Well, it's God's will.
Yes.
It's God's will that a 10-year-old be raped and forced to carry the child.
And I mean, there's nothing admirable about saying it, although there's something, as I'm thinking through, maybe it's better if they just say that's what they believe in so that people can say, I want no part of it and vote against it. It strikes me as somehow, well, anyway, I can't say better.
I think it's important that we force them, that we have these difficult conversations, that they be very public, that people say the word abortion a lot.
Yeah.
And that Republicans have to make their positions clear.
Even when they are trying to not make them clear, like saying this one's not an abortion or that one really was permitted under our law, it gives you a chance to say, no, it isn't, and here's why. And people should believe that. And I guess the third layer of denial, also thanks to Tucker Carlson, who just came out, he leading the charge for, this Ohio story just didn't happen. It's not true.
Right.
On top of it all, in case some of these other ones don't work, which struck me as particularly egregious. And just from a weird, now that I'm thinking about the religious objectors that you were just describing in Idaho, what an interesting slap in the face it is to them to say that your whole tenet of faith didn't happen. By the way, are you being tested by God? No, you're not. It didn't even happen. What are you talking about? The Tucker Carlson has just can't believe that your thing really. I mean, I guess he just doesn't believe in you and what your position is, and if that makes anybody uncomfortable, he's going to deny you exist. That's odd. That you would then be like, I'll watch that program and do whatever he says. That guy denies me. All right. People are weird, and I guess if you can explain anything with God working in strange and mysterious ways, then I guess you can do whatever you want. It's easy. Okay. That doesn't make any sense, but hey, strange, mysterious. So they're moving forward with illustrating just how far this crazy agenda goes today in the House and then over the next couple of days. I guess taking a break away from appropriations, which, people were going to be distracted from in August anyway.
Right. And it's not actually, they're just doing preliminary work on appropriations because they haven't come to agreement with the Senate on what spending levels are going to be. And they probably won't before the election because Republicans are going to think we can get the Senate back, and so we can impose our own spending limits on things. So
yes, so they're in a position to leverage this. So I guess they take August off, come back. They have September to beat the deadline, but they just probably won't. Just do a lot of CRs.
They really should not take August off, as usual. I mean, there's enough going on. For example, getting all of those Senate vacancies filled, or Senate judiciary vacancies filled. That really is something that the Senate needs to hop on and get done before McConnell may or may not be taking over the Senate next year.
Okay. So that's a good reason not to do it. Any indication that they really wouldn't take August off? I mean, that's hard to make them do.
There never is. They're always going to do it. It would make Manchin mad.
Yeah. Because it got to be no place like West Virginia in August.
Yep.
You got to go and burn some coal for fun.
Well, no. He gets to go to where his condo is in a nature reserve kind of area that has gotten a lot of federal funding for protections.
Terrific. And there's not even burning coal in it?
No.
Even if he wants to, he could,
He could.
So he has a condo in is it in the mountains somewhere in West Virginia, or is he out of state? I don't even know. Where does he hang out?
No, it's in West Virginia.
Okay.
I think in the mountains. It's in a federally protected public lands kind of area. And
where you probably can't just.
He and his wife have directed a great deal of federal funding to the protecting that, to keeping the coal away. Of course, the cloud is going to blow over it.
Yeah, so, I guess they just have to be upwind of it is all. All right. Well, I hope he enjoys his vacation somewhere. And imagine wanting to, I guess, going there rather than being on your yacht, and you have just choices available to you.
Drive the Maserati to West Virginia.
Yeah. Can the Maserati make it? I bet they used federal funds to pave the road into this place so that they could drive the Maserati there.
I would not be at all surprised.
Yeah,
oh my God, that man.
Well, he's a schemer. And we covered the fact that he has blown up all the deals that were on the table again. That's just what Manchin does. I'm not terribly surprised. I'm no longer incensed in the same way.
It's how can you be? I just really, really, really hope at least the last two things he lets happen. And that's something else that Schumer's got to get done before August. getting those the Affordable Care Act premium.
Yeah, he still says he's okay with that.
He says he's okay with that.
All right.
5 months ago, he was pissed that they were doing all of these things and the American Rescue Plan that were only temporary, that only lasted 2 years, and now he's saying, oh yeah, let's just do this for 2 years. Joe Manchin is not particularly intellectually consistent.
No.
I think it's because Joe Manchin is not particularly intellectually involved.
Yeah, that may be. And he just doesn't feel these things very deeply because he's reading off of cue cards.
Pretty much, whatever lobbyist whispered the last thing into his ear, that's what he's going to be for this time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult even to see, to cling to the hope of the last couple of things that he says are okay. I mean, he's used to say that other things were okay, and he's changed his mind on those. So I guess you got to nail down what you can while you have them.
Get this vote done while you can. Right. It means that there won't. I don't see how they could possibly then do anything related to climate or taxes, because you pretty much only have one shot at this budget reconciliation bill. This is it. They could conceivably argue that they've got 2 budget reconciliation bills out of the last one that they engineered. It's hard to see how. It would be untested. They could also try to get the spending bills done or the reauthorization done fast enough for 2023 to get a reconciliation bill out of that they could use on climate, but that would have to be done, before the midterms. So if they go the former, if they go under the existing authorization of the budget reconciliation from last time around, they have a deadline of September 30th. This time they would just have a deadline of November, but what happens between August and November in an election year.
Yeah, well, everybody goes crazy. And
so this is where we're at. Okay,
well, not unfamiliar territory, but not great, to say the least. All right, well, what can you do? We'll just see what we can squeeze out of Manchin between now and then. Cinema has been just a non-factor in the discussions. I don't know where she's parking herself.
Who knows where she is?
That's always the issue.
People have been taking, and this has kind of pissed her off, people being Schumer and Democratic leadership, assuming that if you get Manchin, Sinema's not going to want to stand alone. And that apparently has pissed her off, but I don't know that it's driven her away.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could see why it would upset her, but I mean, okay, then speak up.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to. Well, then okay.
Yeah.
We're going to assume things about you.
What do you do with her other than beat her in a primary?
Yeah, nothing. I mean, if she won't talk, she won't talk. And if you make the wrong assumption and it makes her mad, and then you say, so what do you want? Well, nothing.
Yeah. So either you have that, or you have Manchin, who just lies about what he wants.
Great.
Or says something different in private as opposed to in public.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then just deny that you committed to these other things. Neither one ideal to deal with, to say the least.
No, and I do feel very bad for Chuck Schumer. But I also don't think that Chuck Schumer has necessarily been adept in dealing with this. So.
I'm not certain how you would do it, but I don't know. All we have is like mythical ideas of some other leader would have been able to. Well, these two make it virtually impossible. One guy who switches positions all the time, and one woman who won't tell you what her position is on anything. I don't know maybe no one could have done it. But it's frustrating watching him.
Lyndon Johnson maybe could have just knocked their heads together.
It's possible, true.
I mean, I think that it would have taken brute force. I think it would have taken, Joe, we're going to strip your committee chairmanship.
Something like that. Or just, I don't know, even being in the presence of someone you found physically intimidating for whatever reason, even if he never really threatened you with anything. That's not the Schumer style or approach. I don't think he'd be able to pull that off, even if he were bigger. So it's just not him. And I'm not certain that it's a great attribute, really, to have in your leadership either.
No, Harry Reid, would he have been able to?
He wasn't so physically intimidating either, but, I don't know, he was blunter.
Blunter, and I think probably necessarily ruthless.
Yeah.
He may have been able to do it just because you knew when you were dealing with Harry Reid, if he said he was going to take your chairmanship away, he was going to take your chairmanship away.
Yeah. Well,
so, I don't know.
I guess when a majority leader comes around to that, it's because he's already cleared it with everybody else, too.
Right.
And, Schumer may or may not be able to. Maybe that's what he has trouble landing, is getting everybody on board. But this.
And I think probably that's the case.
Okay. Well, are you going to be watching the primetime hearings on Thursday, or are you going to be responsible for writing on them, I guess?
I am not going to be responsible for writing, but I'll certainly be watching.
Yeah. Oh, it's like
Benny Thompson has COVID, but they're going to go ahead with him anyway.
Okay. I guess they have to. Now that everybody treats COVID as though it's something you can work through. I saw somebody just tweeting the other day about working at a restaurant. So widely circulating, and the person shows up and asks, "Can I be seated outside because I just tested positive?"
God.
Okay, I guess. I was thinking the curb would be a great place for you to eat, but okay. Yeah. All right, so I guess he'll be masked, I suppose, and people will be distancing themselves from him. But it's important to go ahead with this. They can't delay it anymore. I'm glad you'll be able to watch it.
Well, no, Benny
fun.
Thompson won't be there.
Oh, he won't? Oh, okay.
No, but they're going to go ahead without him.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually quite smart.
Yes.
And another selfless move by the members of the committee to put the hearings ahead of individual glory. So, good. All right, well, we'll check in with you, 3 weeks from now?
From NetworksRadio.com.
All right. Good luck with all the personal items on the agenda. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much.
Okay, for all the rest of you, stay tuned, of course, for Justice Putnam to pick up with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next right here on Networks Radio. Less time for me today to tell you what's on the agenda, but I can assure you it's eclectic and exciting, and begins with the Garland memo, doubling down on the bar policy. That sounds terrible. Stay tuned.